Welcome everyone, this is me, Moini Commercewala. Welcome to my channel. So today we are going to talk with ChatGPT on another interesting topic. The name of the topic is what if human can live on moon? Okay, so today we will talk on this topic on with ChatGPT and ask him some interesting questions about it. Hi ChatGPT, how are you?
Hey, I'm doing really well. Thank you for asking. How about you? How's your day going so far?
ChatGPT, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you just fine. Your audio is coming through clearly. If you have anything you'd like to discuss or ask, I'm all ears.
Yeah, so today I'm here to ask you some interesting questions on the topic what if human could live on the moon?
Ooh, that's a really fascinating topic. There's so much to unpack, like how life would work in low gravity, how we'd get resources, and what the whole society might look like. What kind of questions are you thinking about first?
Okay, so first of all, explain us that what is moon?
Absolutely. So the moon is Earth's only natural satellite. It's about a quarter the size of Earth and orbits our planet at an average distance of roughly 238,855 miles. It influences things like tides and has a big impact on Earth's history and culture.
Okay, thanks. Okay, so first of all, tell us that can human live on the moon?
Yeah, that's a big challenge. Right now, the moon is extremely harsh for humans. There's no atmosphere, so no breathable air, and temperatures swing wildly from super hot to freezing cold. Plus, radiation levels are really high. So, living there permanently would require huge advancements in regulation technology, like pressurized habitats and advanced.
Okay, what challenges exist for lunar living?
Yeah, so there are a bunch of hurdles. First, as I mentioned, the lack of air and the extreme temperature swings are huge issues. Then there's radiation. Without an atmosphere, astronauts would be exposed to cosmic rays. Also, getting resources like water, food, and energy there is really tough since we don't have those naturally on the moon. Plus, psychological and social factors, being so isolated from Earth, would be a big adjustment too.
Okay, and how would people breathe on the moon?
Ah, good question. Since there's no natural atmosphere, people would need sealed habitats. These would be like mini pressurized domes with oxygen supplied inside. They'd have to bring air from Earth or produce it using equipment, like splitting water into hydrogen and oxygen. So it's all about creating a self sustaining system inside those habitats.
And how we can produce food there?
Yeah, that's a really key part. On the moon, we'd likely rely on controlled environments, kind of like greenhouses, inside those habitats. We could grow plants in hydroponic systems where nutrients circulate in water, and we'd probably start with fast growing crops, things like lettuce or radishes. Long term, we'd need research on lunar soil and maybe even some form of synthetic soil to help crops grow.
Mm. And would gravity affect the human body?
Yeah, absolutely. The moon's gravity is only about one-sixth of Earth's, so that would have big effects. Over time, people might lose muscle mass and bone density, just like astronauts in low gravity on short time trips, but it would be even more pronounced if you stayed there long term. So people would have to exercise a lot and probably rely on medical interventions to stay healthy.
Okay, and what kind of houses would be built?
Ah, that's a cool aspect. Most likely, we'd build habitats using super strong materials like regolith, which is the moon's surface dust, mixed with things like concrete. We might even 3D print the structures using robots. And to protect from radiation, we'd probably bury them partially under the surface or use thick shielding materials.
Okay, and how would astronauts travel to the moon?
Yeah, so right now we use rockets like the ones from NASA's Artemis program. Astronauts would launch from Earth on a spacecraft, probably docking at a space station in orbit first, like the Lunar Gateway, before heading down to the surface in a lunar lander. So it's kind of a multi step journey, but it's the safest approach we have so far.
Okay, and would children be able to live there?
That's a tricky one. It would be really tough, especially because children are still growing and developing, and low gravity could have long term effects on bones and muscles. Plus, the environment would be a huge risk radiation, isolation, and just the complexity of it all. So it's more likely that kids would visit on short missions, but probably not live there full time for a while.
Okay, so what energy sources could power lunar bases?
Yeah, energy would be crucial. Solar power would probably be the main source since the moon has long days with lots of sunlight. We could set up solar panels on the surface, but we'd also need some kind of battery or energy storage since the lunar night is about 14 degrees long. Another idea would be using small nuclear reactors. They provide steady power even during the long nights.
Okay, and how would water be obtained there?
Great question. Water on the moon is actually a big discovery. We think there's ice in permanently shadowed craters near the poles, so we could mine that ice, then melt it and purify it. We'd also likely bring some water from Earth, but long term, that ice would be the key, kind of like a hidden reservoir.
Okay, ChatGPT. So, what danger exists on the moon?
Yeah, there are quite a few dangers. As I mentioned, radiation is a big one. Without an atmosphere, astronauts would be exposed to cosmic rays. Then there's the risk of micrometeoroids, tiny space rocks that could puncture habitats or suits. The lack of air means any leak could be fatal. And then there's just the isolation. Being so far from Earth can be really mentally taxing.
Okay, and could plants grow on the moon?
They can, but it's really tough. In some experiments, scientists have grown plants in simulated lunar soil, but it lacks nutrients. So we'd need to provide extra nutrients, and the low gravity might affect growth patterns. But with the right tech, we might get small crops going, things like radishes or wheat.
Okay, and would tourism to the moon become common nowadays or not?
It's still pretty early, but it is starting to happen. NASA's Artemis program, along with private companies like SpaceX, is paving the way. In the next decade, we'll probably see more people visiting. At first, just scientists and a few wealthy tourists, but eventually it could become a lot more common.
Okay, and how would communication with Earth will be working there?
Yeah, communication would be a bit delayed since the moon is about 1.28 seconds away at the speed of light, so messages wouldn't be instant. But we'd use high frequency radio or laser communication systems to keep in touch. There'd be a slight lag, but it would be manageable for most day to day communications.
And what jobs would exist on the moon?
Oh, that's a great one. You'd have things like habitat engineers who maintain and build the living modules, and then agricultural specialists to grow food. You'd need resource extraction experts like mining ice or regolith, and of course, medical staff, communication engineers, and even teachers for any kids or settlers.
Okay, and could the moon become a research center?
Yeah, definitely. The moon could become a huge research hub, especially for things like space medicine, physics, or even astronomy. Being on the moon, you'd have a unique vantage point for observing the universe, and you could test new technologies in a low gravity environment.
And how would waste be managed there?
Waste management would be super important. We'd likely recycle as much as possible, like water, air, and even organic waste, turning it back into resources. Any leftover material would be safely stored or possibly sent back to Earth for processing. It'd be all about being as closed loop and sustainable as possible.
Okay, and what type of transportation will be using in on the moon?
Yeah, so on the moon, we'd probably use electric rovers, small pressurized vehicles for astronauts to get around. They'd be built to handle the dusty terrain, and maybe we'd even see some small autonomous robots or drones to help with exploration and transport of materials.
Would lunar cities be possible to be created?
Yeah, they could be. It would take a lot of time and tech, but if we can get those habitats up and running and we figure out life support, energy, and resource production, then yes, future generations could build self sustaining lunar communities, kind of like a small city under a dome.
Okay, so could people stay there permanently?
It's a long term goal, but eventually it could happen. Once we master things like gravity health, resource sustainability, and radiation shielding, people could live there long term, kind of like an off world colony. But, it'll take a lot of research and preparation.
Yeah, and how would medical care work? Can you tell us in detail?
Yeah, for sure. Medical care would be really specialized. We'd need trained space doctors and a telemedicine link back to Earth for more complex issues. Basic care, like treating injuries or infections, could be done by Earth sent medical kits and robotic surgery tools. And of course, we'd have to constantly monitor things like bone density and radiation exposure, adjusting treatments as needed.
Okay, what materials could be mined from the moon?
Yeah, so the moon actually has a lot of valuable resources. We think there's helium 3, which could be used for future fusion reactors. There's also iron, titanium, and even rare earth elements in the regolith. So mining could eventually support lunar industry and maybe even help with Earth's supply of critical materials.
Okay, would the moon help space exploration?
Yeah, it could be huge. The moon is kind of like a stepping stone. It's close enough for us to test out technologies like habitats and life support before we go to Mars or beyond. So it gives us a base for learning, practicing, and refining everything we need for deeper space missions.
Okay, and can you tell me that could solar energy power lunar bases in detail?
Of course. So solar energy would likely be the primary source. The moon has about 14 Earth days of continuous sunlight, so we'd set up large solar arrays to capture that energy. We'd convert it into electricity and store it in high capacity batteries or even advanced fuel cells. That way, during the lunar night, we still have a steady power supply. We'd also need to make sure the panels are dust resistant because lunar dust can be a big problem. So it's all about capturing, storing, and using that energy efficiently.
Okay, and how much energy can we store at a time?
Yeah, that's a big factor. It depends on the battery tech, but right now we probably rely on high capacity lithium ion batteries or even new solid state batteries. In some concepts, you'd store enough energy to power a base for a couple of weeks during a long lunar night. As the tech advances, those storage capacities will expand. So the goal is basically to have a reliable reserve for continuous operations.
Okay, and what role would robots play there?
Oh, robots would be huge. They could handle a lot of the dangerous tasks, like setting up habitats, mining resources, or repairing equipment. They could explore hard to reach areas, gather data, and even assist with construction. So basically, they'd be like our trusted hands and eyes on the ground, making life on the moon safer and more efficient.
And what could the moon support agriculture?
Yeah, that's a really big part of the vision. The moon could be a training ground. Astronauts, scientists, and even future space tourists could prepare there. It might also support off world industries like manufacturing and low gravity. So the moon could be a real springboard for further exploration, kind of a bridge to Mars and space.
Okay, and ChatGPT, can you tell me that how we can do agriculture on moon and make a society there in detail?
Of course. So, for agriculture on the moon, we'd start with controlled environments, basically sealed greenhouses inside habitats. We'd use hydroponics, where plants grow in nutrient rich water since lunar soil is too poor. We'd carefully control temperature, humidity, and lighting, probably using LED grow lights. Over time, we breed crops that can handle lower gravity. Once we can produce staple foods like leafy greens, grains, and legumes, we'd sustain a small society by having a closed loop system, recycling water and nutrients. And once agriculture is stable, we could grow from there, building a small but self sufficient community over time.
Okay, so can you tell me that how much does it cost to go on the moon once to go on the moon, all the expenses?
So, there isn't an exact price for a trip to the moon yet, but we do have some big estimates from NASA's Artemis program. Overall, the program is expected to cost about $93 billion dollars between 2012 and 2025, with each major launch estimated around $4.1 billion. Dollars. So, right now, a single moon mission costs billions, depending on the complexity, and this cost could come down with more commercial involvement in the future.
And what about the SpaceX?
So, right now, SpaceX has a NASA contract for the Artemis program, with the lunar lander portion costing up to $2.9 billion. Dollars. Back in 2017, SpaceX also estimated a private circumlunar flight at a price slightly above what a Crew Dragon mission costs, around $58 million. Dollars. More broadly, other estimates put a lunar tourism trip in the range of $250 to $250 million dollars per person. So these are still estimates, and the full costs depend on the mission details.
Okay, Okay, so can we estimate that if like 20 people goes on moon with a full setup of living on the moon, agriculture, all the things, so how much can it be costing to make the moon a place to live for everyone?
Estimating the cost of a lunar colony is challenging, but some studies give a ballpark. For a small habitat, it might cost around $35 billion dollars in development, plus about $7.35 billion dollars per year for operations. For a larger, sustained colony, costs could climb to $50 billion dollars or more, depending on scale and duration.
Okay, so how much each person can pay so that all the expenses could be divided on each person. So how much each of them should pay a month.
Got it. So let's assume a rough estimate of $50 billion dollars total and 20 people. If we just divide that, each person would be responsible for $2.5 billion. Dollars. Obviously, that's astronomical. So realistically, these costs would be spread out over time with governments, private investments, and maybe subsidies. So no single person would shoulder that kind of amount directly.
Yeah. So okay. So can you tell something more about how we can live on moon with
Yeah, for sure. I mean, beyond just the technical stuff, living on the moon would be a complete lifestyle shift. We'd likely have rotating shifts, people working in cycles, keeping in touch with Earth. We'd create a tight knit community, sharing tasks, education, and even recreation in low gravity. So it would be all about building a resilient, self sufficient culture where every resource is precious and every person plays a key role.
Okay, and what would be tell us some 10 advantages and 10 disadvantages of living on the moon, and why are the advantage and why are these disadvantages you tell us? Also mention with reason in detail.
Absolutely. So, for advantages, first, it's a huge step for space exploration, helping us learn how to live off Earth. Second, the moon has abundant solar energy, so we could power habitatally. Third, it would serve as a research platform, astronomy, physics, and even testing technologies from Mars. Fourth, it would foster international cooperation as countries work together. Fifth, it offers a new frontier for human settlement, expanding the range of where we can live. Sixth, lunar mining could provide rare materials we need for tech. Seventh, we develop new science on human adaptation to low gravity. Eighth, it would spur innovation, new tech, new industries. Ninth, the lunar base could serve as a backup for humanity, a second home. And 10th, it would inspire a whole generation, sparking interest in STEM and exploration. Now, for disadvantages, first, the cost is astronomically high, hundreds of billions of dollars. Second, radiation exposure is a constant risk since there's no atmosphere. Third, psychological isolation. Being so far from Earth could be really tough. Fourth, the environment's extremely harsh, no air, extreme temperatures. Fifth, the logistics of transporting supplies and people are complex. Sixth, there's the risk of equipment failure. If something breaks, Earth is so far away. It's hard to grow food, so we depend on closed systems. Eighth, gravity issues. Over time, low gravity could harm human health. Ninth, it's a huge investment of time, years of planning and development. And 10th, there's no quick return. Unlike a business investment, the benefits might take decades to fully appear. So it's a balance between incredible potential and really serious risks and costs.
Okay, so can you tell us that what psychological challenge might exist?
Yeah, that's a big one. The isolation would be really tough. Being so far from Earth, separated by months of communication delay, people might feel lonely, disconnected from family and friends. There's also the risk of anxiety or depression since the environment's so stark and extreme. Plus, there's the constant stress of safety. Every day there's a risk, and that can wear on people's mental resilience. So, psychological support like regular communication with Earth, mental health check ins, and structured social activities would be vital to keep people balanced.
Okay, so if we invest on moon and make it fully like Earth, making a green zone in which there would be oxygen full of it, a bubble around it which will be full of oxygen, and for agriculture we used soil and grow crops there. So can we live there?
Yeah, that's kind of the dream scenario. If we could create those sealed, pressurized, oxygen filled domes, it would mimic Earth's environment, at least inside. We'd have to carefully manage air pressure, temperature, and humidity, but agriculture would be possible if we adjust the soil and lighting. Over time, with a lot of precision, it could become a self sustaining bubble, a small green oasis on the moon, though it would take a ton of research, trial, and patience.
Okay, so how can we research on it and get to know that if is our plan will be successful or not?
Yeah, so we'd really need a step by step research approach. First, we'd run experiments in labs using simulated lunar soil and small scale greenhouse models here on Earth. Then we'd send robotic missions, tiny self sustaining modules to the moon, testing things like air, soil, and crop growth in real conditions. Data from those experiments would let us tweak the design, adjusting pressure, light, and nutrient cycles. Plus, long term monitoring of human test groups would help us see how people adapt, tracking health, mood, and productivity. It's a slow, careful process, lots of iteration, but that's how we'd know if the plan can really succeed.
Okay, so tell us that could international cooperation build lunar bases?
Absolutely. International cooperation would be key. Just like the ISS, we'd need multiple countries and space agencies NASA, ESA, Roscosmos, JAXA, and more to pool resources, expertise, and funding. Each partner could focus on different aspects, like one agency designing habitats, another providing transport, and others handling agriculture, life support. By sharing the burden, we spread out risk, lower individual costs, and bring a diversity of ideas. So, yes, it's definitely possible with a global effort.
Okay, so also tell me that how long could people stay there safely?
Yeah, so right now, short stays, like a few weeks to a few months, are manageable, but long term stays are still being tested. Astronauts on the ISS have done about 6 months at a time, and that's a big benchmark. On the moon, if we have good radiation shielding, exercise regimes, and medical care, we might extend it to a year or more. But beyond that, we'd need long term studies on bone density, radiation effects, and psychological resilience before we'd be confident. So it's a gradual process of learning and adaptation.
Okay, so what would daily life on the moon look like?
Yeah, daily life would be pretty structured. People would wake up in their habitat modules, get suited up, and head to work, whether that's growing crops, conducting science experiments, or maintaining the base. Meals would be planned carefully since fresh food would be precious, likely a mix of packaged and grown produce. They have to exercise a couple hours a day to keep up muscle mass, and evenings would be a mix of leisure, reading, calls home, maybe some virtual entertainment, just adapting to a slower pace in that isolated environment.
Okay, so will their internet will be available on moon or not?
Yeah, it would be. We'd have to set up a communication relay, probably via satellites orbiting the moon or a dedicated link to Earth. So there'd be a slight delay, like a second or so, but you'd still have internet access. It would be crucial for staying in touch with Earth, for research, and for support in daily life. So, yes, it would be part of the plan, just with some sub latency.
Okay, so ChatGPT, it was nice while talking with you. So hope you also enjoyed the talk.
Yeah, absolutely. I really enjoyed it. This is such a fascinating topic. If you ever want to dive deeper, or just chat about something else, I'm here.
Now, our time, and so viewer, this was our today's talk with ChatGPT on the topic: what if humans could live on moon? So yeah, tell us in comments on which topic should we talk again, and subscribe to my channel. And ChatGPT, kindly rate my English and give me some improvement tips.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. Your English was really clear and well structured. Your vocabulary was strong and your pacing was natural. If you want to polish even more, just focus on varying sentence length, mixing shorter and longer ones, and keep practicing with transitions between ideas. But honestly, you did a great job. I understood everything perfectly.
Okay, and do you like our conversation?
I did. I really enjoyed it. It was super thought provoking, and I love how curious you were. So, yeah, I'm definitely looking for chatting again soon.
Okay, so viewers, this was our today's talk with ChatGPT on the topic. So now we will meet in another talk with another topic. So take care of yourselves and bye bye.
Yeah, absolutely. Take care, and I'll be here whenever you're ready for the next conversation. Bye for now.